Okay. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded and also live streamed on HWCam. And we're going to start off this evening with public comment. Is our Zoom link up?
Yep.
Okay. So we're going to have an opportunity for people to public comment both here in person in the room, as well as people who are participating virtually on Zoom. And those people that are participating on Zoom, just so you're aware, after the public comment portion of the meeting is over, the Zoom link will be closed, and you can continue to listen to the meeting on HWCam live stream. If you choose to make a comment, well, I want to start by saying that public comment is your opportunity to be heard and to have us listen to you. It's not a discussion or a debate or dialogue, but it's your opportunity to express your opinion on issues that are within the school committee's authority. I ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes. I'm going to have, did I have the timer? Jen is going to time this evening. She'll let you know when you have 30 seconds left, and then she'll let you know also when your time is up at the 3 minutes. I'm going to remind, we post the public comment policy on each agenda, but I'm just going to remind everyone that it's important that topics of discussion should be within the purview of the school committee, which are the school committee primarily reviews the budget, approves the budget, hires and evaluates the superintendent, and is focused on the educational goals and policies of the school district. I think I've said everything. We're gonna, I also will remind you, please state your name and spell your name and state your address. Okay. If anyone in the room would like to speak, I'd ask you to approach the podium. Okay.
Mike Hebert, M-I-K-E-H-E-B-E-R-T, 96 Blueberry Lane in Hamilton. Well, it's the big night. I see no scenario in which you guys are going to vote to continue the masks. So I think it's a night to celebrate. I think we're all happy. At least half this town is going to be happy. We appreciate your patience in listening to us. I think like in reflection, we're going to wonder what took so long. I don't understand why we're last. We're virtually last. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's tacit support for this approach to COVID at this stage. I don't know if it's procedural in the way that the calendar happened to line up. I don't know if it's, out of disdain or, for people speaking up, because I know it's been noisy. I don't know what it is. I wish it went quicker, but here we are. I know this, that even after this, half the school is going to keep wearing them. I'm already hearing about the peer pressure amongst, especially the girls, who's going to be the first one to take it off. We got 2 years of stuff we got to unpack. So I am concerned about it, but I do thank you for taking the first step tonight and making this vote, because I know you're going to do it right. That's all I got to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else in the room who'd like to speak? Okay. Mr. Tracy, do we have anyone on the Zoom link?
Anybody on Zoom that would like to speak, please use the raise your hand feature.
No? Okay. Okay. Right, at this point, we're going to close the Zoom link and invite, which I see as a fairly large number of people on Zoom. I invite you all to switch right over and watch the live stream on HWCam so you can view the rest of the meeting.
If you are on Zoom, I'm going to shut the link down so you can jump back on the HW Cam site, and they are streaming live. Thank you.
Okay.
23. It was actually 26 at one point.
All right, next up, as we do routinely, I'm going to ask a member of the committee to review a portion of our school committee protocols. Julia.
Thank you. School committee members will attend meetings on time and be well prepared to discuss agenda items. While at meetings, members will stay focused on the agenda items and will not engage in communication outside of the agenda being discussed. When making decisions, school committee members will keep an open mind, utilizing the best information available, including research, best practices, public input, and financial considerations. Members will debate issues and not each other. Members will analyze carefully and debate fully wherever necessary prior to making decisions.
Thank you, Julia. Okay, next, we have the consent agenda. Does anyone have any items that they'd like to hold from the consent agenda? Anna.
I'd like to hold the minutes of February 3rd.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, Jen, can we have a motion?
I move that we accept the consent agenda as written with the exception of the February 3rd minutes.
Second.
Second by Michelle Horgan. All right, since it's the consent agenda, there is no discussion. All those in favor? And the motion is unanimous and the motion passes. Anna, what did you want to share about the February 3rd minutes?
I just have a couple of very small Scrivener's errors, but I think they merit correction. One of them is there's an inconsistency on the spelling of Dibbles. Dibbles 8, and then Dibbles later with 2 Bs. I'm not sure which one is actually correct. I think it's with the 1 B. So that's one. In one place, my name is misspelled, which is common, but I'd still like to have it corrected. In another place, there's a reference to Mrs. Carr instead of Dr. Carr, but right above it says Dr. Carr. And then the funniest one is there's a sentence which I said, which was quoted correctly. Ms. Steetzig voices her concerns, noting that the school committee members are not qualified to make such decisions, with the exception, is what I said, of Dr. Carr, but it actually says the expectation of Dr. Carr, so I think that should be corrected. That's it.
Okay. Is there anyone else has comments, questions?
Eric, how do you spell Dibbles? I didn't hear you.
Yeah, B-E-L-S.
1B?
Yep.
Thank you.
I'll have it corrected.
Okay. Anna, would you like to make a motion on that?
Oh, sure. I move we approve the February 2nd minutes with the small Scrivener's errors as noted.
Just February 3rd.
Yes, just February 3rd.
Second?
Okay, seconded by Michelle Horgan. All right. All those in favor? And that is unanimous, and the motion passes. Okay. Okay. So, first up on new business is a vote on the face covering policy. Jen, could I have a motion to start the conversation?
I move that we accept Superintendent Tracy's recommendation for removing the mask mandate.
Second.
Second by Michelle Horgan.
And could I make an amendment, please?
Yes, let's hear
Could
it.
I please have, or ask that the face coverings go, if we vote affirmatively, that the face coverings go into effect tomorrow afternoon, March 4th at 3:45 p.m.
Okay, so I'm here, I'm sorry, was there a second? A second by Michelle Bailey? Okay, so just to be, I want to be clear that you are saying we would accept the vote, the face covering as presented, with the exception that you would like the start time to be 3:45 p.m. tomorrow. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that's correct.
Okay. All right. We need to vote first on the amendment. So does anyone have any discussion?
I'm just curious why the time?
Well, central staff gets out at 4 o'clock, and I thought it'd be nice to give them an extra 15 minutes, or start on the weekend 15 minutes early, that's why.
And are there sports that are affected by it?
That's the weekend, yes. Hockey has a game on Saturday. Yep.
So do we have my only question would be, I'm sorry, my only question would be, do you feel we can get the messaging out effectively in
That was
time?
my question.
Yeah, we've already started to
Okay.
kind of get people in motion.
All right.
We're in a good place. It'll continue tomorrow. There are meetings planned tomorrow in anticipation.
Yeah, can I talk about the messaging?
Yeah.
I want to talk about how amazing I think the messaging has been so far. I know my son is in first grade, and he came home today, and he said that there's already been discussions about whether or not the masks might come off, and he quoted me Bucher CARES, which is cooperation, assertiveness, responsibility, empathy, and self-control. And he said they've been having a lot of discussions at Bucher, and I know that Mr. Principal Hovey was saying this morning at the Friends meeting, there are assemblies already in place. Tomorrow, no, whether or not whatever happens, but there are assemblies in place, and there's a lot of discussion already in place. So people are discussing, it's being discussed.
Okay. Just procedurally, I want to remind us that we have the amendment is on the table right now. So do you have something to say about the amendment?
The only
Yep.
data I was able to find for Hamilton Wenham actually shows that our numbers are staying low.
Awesome.
So we're not, at least in the towns, we're not seeing the spike after February vacation. We don't have this, I don't think we have the school data yet, but
Okay.
the town data is not showing anything.
Michelle Bailey?
Can we call the question on the amendment so that then we can discuss the heart of the?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, so do we have to vote about whether we're ready to vote? All right, oh my gosh, all right. All right, if you are ready to vote on the, are you ready to vote on the amendment? Yes. Yes. Was that unanimous?
Well, when I said call the question, that
Oh, yeah,
there wasn't
okay.
like an vote thing. Yeah.
All right, so we are ready to vote on the amendment. All right, so all those in favor of the amendment? All right, that is unanimous, and the motion passes. And so now the amended question is to begin mask optional, or lifting the mask policy at 3:45 tomorrow afternoon. Is there further discussion, questions? Michelle?
I have a question about item number 4.
Can you speak into the mic? I'm having trouble hearing you.
Trying. I have a question about item number 4. I'm just curious how we are going to communicate that information about who is required to wear a mask.
So first thing they'll see tomorrow is information that would go out from the school level, and then I will put my weekly out, which is widely read from what I hear.
Page turner.
Every word. Eagerly anticipated.
But it'll be also with all the nurses. All the nurses still have to manage masks in health offices. That's still a requirement. So part of that is also monitoring who's been out, who's been in, testing. They're still doing all of that monitoring. So a lot of it will be based on messaging that we do appropriately, and then the message they get from each school and the nurses.
But I guess my question is, say, Brian Menegoni has been out with COVID, and now he returns. How is Anna going to know that Brian should be wearing a mask if
Yeah.
she's not a nurse?
Right, so the nurses would be able to notify the family. They would say, okay, they have the first level of communication with the family. So they would speak with the family, let them know what the expectation is, and then once that person came into school, then it's going to be really monitoring, because it's not something we're going to send an email out to say, Johnny has to be wearing a mask all the time, because I think then you're dealing with a tangled web. So I would leave it up to the building administration to manage.
So it's really on the honor system.
Yeah, I think a lot of it will be. I mean, if you don't test, you don't have it. So it's that we're very fortunate that our families have been great in letting us know even when they test at home. I think, our nurses see a lot of feedback from home to say, okay, my kid's out, so that's been pretty effective to date. So I think we'll continue to do that.
Will teachers know if they have students in their class that are in that 6 to 10 day period?
So technically, no.
Okay.
It'll just be, like I said, the nurses and administration monitoring it.
Other questions?
Is this a discussion portion or just questions?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Discussion.
Move on to discussion.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you, Julia, though.
Sure.
I love that.
That's okay.
It made me happy that you asked that.
I just want to emphasize how important it is to the community to understand that the reason we're here is because of the efficacy of masks and vaccines, and that we are in this place to remove the masks because of all the mitigation strategies. So we don't want to just put the brakes on all the mitigation strategies. We want to encourage pool testing. We want to encourage the at-home testing. We want to encourage not sending your child to school if they're sick. And we want to encourage vaccines and boosters, or at least I do. So I think that we're here because of mitigation strategies, and we can't just say, okay, we're now like, 0 to 60. We're now not doing anything. It's a free-for-all. I think that we need to understand that. I think this is a great step. I fully support, I actually support the amendment, and I fully support Eric Tracy's proposal. But I do think we need to understand that we're here because of the way the community responded and was so responsible with the mitigation strategies. So I just want to say, I don't think that we can pull our kids out of pool testing. I would not want to pull our kids out of the at-home testing. If you're sick, stay at home, get your vaccine, get your booster. That's what I want to say.
Okay. Is there other discussion?
The other thing I
David?
wanted to say is, I think the timeline we had laid out really worked. I know it isn't quick enough for some, and I understand completely, because I'm definitely ready myself. But as far as making the decision goes and the data, we all needed to feel comfortable. I think the timing couldn't work out any more perfectly. Because even if we had a meeting Monday night, I think just having a few days of seeing that no cases were popping up around town was just that final nail in the coffin to really just put this to bed. So.
Thank you. All right, Michelle Bailey.
So over the break, I went to Spain, which is on the number 4 don't go to list, as are most countries in the world. And it was interesting. They had only lifted their outdoor mask mandate the week before we arrived. They still had indoor masking. Most people were still wearing their masks outside. There was a lot of mitigation strategies. We were reminded often when we entered buildings to sanitize our hands. So I want to say, like what Julia was saying, that removing the masks is not something people have done worldwide, right? It's really only here in America that we're having this issue. So I hope that people will take advantage more so of our pool testing and our at-home testing, because COVID is not gone. Because even though I was in Spain to visit my son, on the last day we were there, he got COVID. So it's not gone yet. So I do encourage everyone to participate, as Julia did. And I also encourage people not to get rid of their masks, because if this is not gone and comes back, as it has had the tendency to do, we may have to return to masking. So don't throw them out yet.
Other members? Jen?
I'm going to be honest, I just followed the science. If the CDC hadn't changed their guidelines, I wouldn't have changed my vote.
All right, Anna?
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think for me, the hardest part of, as I just read in the minutes, I think it's still sort of laughable that local school boards are the last people to make this decision. So I agree with everyone. It's clear that we're here. I'm also really grateful to Michelle for bringing up the amendment and the timeline. I know sport's really important, and actually I have a lot of, friends of friends and friends of kids who are playing in tournaments and whatnot. So thank you, Michelle, for that. I think it's the right call. But I do think that as a policy body, I also was really disturbed by voting against the CDC. So I'm grateful that they changed it. And I think the only thing I would want to say is thank you to the public who's offered their opinions. I know that some people don't always feel heard, but a lot of us really do try to listen. And I take a lot of calls from people and have heard from people and have agonized over all these decisions as a committee member. So I think it's important to say thank you to the public for their input. But I also really want to take a moment to say thank you to the teachers and the nurses and the principals for getting us to this point. I hope that it sticks for this year. I really do. I hope Michelle's comments, which are sage, I have friends who live around the world and we are in a different spot. So I just think it's important to say thank you for the input. Thank you to the teachers for being the mask police and dealing with it and having to be the front line this entire time. And thank you to the superintendent for bringing a solid recommendation. And I think we're ready to go. Thanks.
Okay.
I'd like to move to vote.
Okay. Looks like we have a motion to vote. Looks like we're ready to go. Okay.
Second?
Second.
Okay.
you.
What was that?
Whatever, if we need a motion,
Oh.
if we need a second, I second that too.
Okay. All right. All right. We can vote on whether we're going to vote, right?
Okay.
All right. Are we going to vote? It looks like yes. All right. And that's unanimous. All right. And we're moving to vote. All right. So everyone's clear that we're voting on the amended motion, which is 3:45 p.m. tomorrow. All right. All those in favor? All right.
Just kidding.
And that's, and that is unanimous, and the motion passes. All right.
Ask for changing the agenda? So the high school people can go? So they can go.
Absolutely.
I should have put them before me.
All right, so, absolutely. So, Eric, you would like to move the NEASC update up above the student opportunity?
Please.
Okay. All right, so we're just going to adjust the agenda just slightly. We're going to ask Mr. Menegoni and Ms. Losi to provide us with our NEASC update.
Also, Mr. Beckwith with us. He's one of the co-chairs of the committee.
Oh,
for
I'm
the
sorry.
high school.
All right, and Mr. Beckwith.
Yes.
Yes?
3:45 tomorrow. 3:45 tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
It did go a bit of a circle.
No, I'm not, no.
Cheering.
Okay. Oh my gosh, it's so cold when they open that door.
I'm gonna get emotional, I'm gonna go with that.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us here this evening. I'm accompanied by Kirsten Losi, assistant principal at the high school, and Kevin Beckwith, who is a math teacher at the high school. And they have served as the co-chairs for our decennial visit from NEASC. So Kevin and Kirsten really were the leaders in terms of putting together our team at the high school in preparation for NEASC's visit, which is going to take place next week. It's coming up quickly. In case you don't know, NEASC stands for New England Association of Schools and Colleges, and they are our accrediting agency. So you know what our accreditation cycle looks like, and it comes in roughly a 10-year total cycle. Back in the 18-19 school year, I can't believe it was already that long ago in the past. We did a self-study that year. We looked at everything about our school, really through the lens of the standards offered by NEASC in terms of accreditation. And at the end of that school year, we were able to produce a self-study report, which was ready for what is now called the Collaborative Conference, with a team from NEASC who came in, looked at the report with us, and spent really a whole week just living at our school, talking to kids, going into classrooms, and learning as much as they possibly could. And the end result of that really was a report that offered us recommendations on the path to improvement and how we can better attend to some of the standards that NEASC has for high schools. And so where it puts us at right now is the blue part on that map up there, our accreditation visit in 2022. So we will be given our accreditation status. Actually, I found out the other day it won't come to us until August, because although we're meeting with them in March, they'll take some time to write a final report, but that report has to be reviewed ultimately by the Commission on Public Schools, which meets quarterly, and they're not going to get to that till the summertime. So we'll get our accreditation status in the summer of this year. You may have recognized that there was a pandemic between the red part and the blue part up there. And certainly, the recommendations that came to us out of that collaborative conference and where we're at now, probably the path and the pace and direction certainly were altered by the pandemic. And I did speak with the chair of our visiting team the other day about, how are you guys going to look at this through COVID? And they said, with the schools that they have done visits with so far since the pandemic started, that's been a big consideration. It's not to excuse away things, but it's to look at, really how that's kind of shaped teaching and learning over these past couple of years. Like I said, our team, chaired by Kirsten and Kevin, also Matt Jones, a Spanish teacher, Barb Mahoney, English teacher, and Aaron Donovan, one of our school counselors, rounded out the steering committee. They're really doing all of the heavy lifting around the organization for this visit. But ultimately, it's really kind of all the members of our learning community at the high school, and even into central office, because we all had to work together to gather all the materials and put together all of the meetings and resources that the NEASC team will need for their visit next week. Just briefly, what is this whole visit about? When is it? It will be next, actually, Sunday it's going to start. They're going to arrive in town, and they will be here through Wednesday, March 9th, and they're doing it at the high school, thankfully. There was the possibility of doing this virtually, and they asked, and I said, I'm not doing a visit virtually. We'll wait till you can do it in person, but thankfully we're at a place where that's possible. Who's coming to visit us? I'll show you the names quickly because I think it's important to recognize the individuals who are taking time out of their busy lives to come and help us out. But our students, faculty, and staff, central office, you guys will be helping out, and parents and guardians are all part of this visit. They'll be spending time with all the stakeholders to, again, see how much progress we've made with respect to some of the recommendations. And really, the substance of this is what is the progress that we have made towards the priority areas for growth that were offered and that we actually came up together with NEASC's help back in 2019. How far did we get towards meeting these priority areas for growth? So a little bit of detail about the when is it. Sunday, March 6th is really arrival time at the hotel. They're in Ipswich. And then Monday, they'll be at the school right away at the beginning of the day. We will give them a tour. They'll be visiting classrooms Monday and Tuesday. And they'll start with the priority area meetings just to meet with groups of teachers to see how far, again, we've gotten with respect to the growth in terms of some of these priority areas. Tuesday looks like a really busy day, but it's Monday and Tuesday are pretty even. Most of the priority area meetings are on Monday, so there should be more bullet points there. But on Tuesday, the NEASC team also will spend some time meeting with students saying, what kind of work do you do here? Show us some papers, show us some projects, performance assessments, tests. What are the things that you do during the day? And the kids are there to talk about that, so we're excited to see what the kids are going to say and ultimately what NEASC thinks about some of that stuff. Meeting with kids, again, going into classrooms, learning about the 4 Cs, which I'll go through at the end, and they'll spend some time with Eric on Tuesday as well as superintendent. And finally, on Wednesday, their last day with us, they're going to debrief the steering committee on what they've learned, and at the end of the day during our PD time, and I think this is a great professional development event, they will present their initial findings to the faculty. You know, this is kind of what we saw, and this is what we think about it. And at that point, I'll be able to return, in a school committee meeting shortly thereafter to give you that same information. The chair wanted me to know that he'd like us to share that information out with the community as soon as possible. Again, they'll be at the high school with us. They're working in the lobby conference room. This may be more detailed than you really want, but they're busy all day long. They're writing and meeting with people, walking all over campus. They'll really be canvassing the entire building, trying to learn as much as they possibly can. Here are the people who will be visiting us. Gary Maestas, who was actually the chair of the committee who was here in 2019. He's back. He's the interim superintendent in Hingham, and it's nice to have that continuity in leadership in terms of the visiting committee, because there's already some relationships that are established there. Caitlin Brown is the principal at Andover. Scott Carpenter is the superintendent in Monomoy. Robert Gesualdo, social studies teacher from Fairhaven. Mary Ellen Ibanelli, English teacher in Linfield, and Andrew Corman, who was an assistant principal in Portsmouth. Mary Ellen was also here with us last time, so that's another person who already knows some of the teachers here, and we'll be able to sort of continue that conversation that she had before. The stakeholders are really everybody who walks through that school every day, and NEASC wants to hear from everybody, because that way they can learn from multiple perspectives how we're attending to their standards and also how we've grown in the areas that we identified previously. Okay, so what is NEASC really looking for? The priority areas for growth is the most important part of this. But they're also looking for any changes in alignment with the foundational elements. Those are the parts of the NEASC standards that schools absolutely must meet in order to obtain accreditation status. Any of the principles of effective practice, those are the other parts of the expectations of their standards. Have there been any substantive changes in those? What does teaching and learning look like in the building, and how does the school function as a learning organization? Are we really set up to continuously improve? That's what that's about. The priority areas for us identified last time. First priority area was vision of the graduate, and as you know, we're already working on that, so we're happy to say that that's in progress. Priority area 2 was curriculum documentation. We needed to have a fully documented written curriculum, and that's in progress, and we have a solid plan to get that done pretty quickly. Priority area 3. Now, this was written before the pandemic, but social emotional learning was pointed out as something that's really important. And it too is in progress and really evolving because we have put supports into place to respond to the pandemic. We've learned what works and what doesn't work, but also how we're going to have to extend and change some things here as the situation evolves for students and we learn how they've reacted to the pandemic. And then perhaps one of the biggest concerns maybe that NEASC had were learning resources, and that always comes down to facilities. What plans are we making to deal with some of the shortcomings that exist in the high school facility, because they're real, they do have program impacts, and how are we planning to get ready for any improvement to that? The foundational elements, again, these are the parts of the standards that you absolutely have to meet, and it's a binary thing. Either you meet it or you do not meet it in order to retain your accreditation status. And in 2019, you can see the ratings that the committee gave us in each one of the foundational elements, and we just this year, as we prepared for this and did our decennial report that we then hand to NEASC, and they'll use that to guide their visit, we gave ourselves a rating. And you can see that we didn't really change any of the ratings, and some of that is due to the pandemic. For example, the written curriculum, we had a plan to get the curriculum done starting at the end of the 18-19 school year, and then boom, all of a sudden, something happened. And then there's been some changes in leadership. There's been other things that have happened that have impeded our progress, but we talk in our decennial report about here is the plan moving forward. And that's something that the committee is going to consider pretty heavily, because it's impacted everyone across the state. The principles for effective practice, again, these are the sort of the detailed points as you look through all of the standards. There's a lot there. They just asked us, what are the ones that you would say changed from 2019? And this is a self-rating. These aren't things that the committee does. We just said in 2019, this is where we're at, in 2022, where we're at. And you can see that there were some changes there. Now, this is not a binary type of thing. This is done more along a continuum of a rubric, from not yet evident all the way up to transforming. And so you can see where we rated ourselves in 2022. And then the 4 C's, you know, how do these things, conceptual understanding, commitment, competency, and capacity, you know, how do those particular traits impact our ability to improve? Because that's what the NEASC process really is about. It used to be this big onerous thing where they kind of dropped a ton of cement on your head, and it's really changed. I think NEASC wants to work with you. They want to figure out where you're at as a school, what you can do to improve, but we need to make sure that we have these traits in place, or at least we understand where we're at to make sure that we can continuously improve. And I think the biggest thing to point out as far as this goes is capacity. You know, we understand what needs to be done. That's not really the difficult part. The challenge is, it's a leadership challenge, I think ultimately is how do we sort of sew all these things together so they don't look like 5 or 6 disparate initiatives, but rather they're part of one whole. And how can we arrange teams of people to take care of each of those parts and continue, help us continue to make progress towards what we've identified as in need of help. All right, I went through a lot really quickly. You will meet with NEASC on Sunday. I think it's going to be a great group. It's going to be a great visit. And again, I can't thank Kirsten and Kevin enough for their hard work, really since the beginning of the school year. You know, and the rest of the steering committee and the teachers, because they've taken on this very important task, this very dense task. Oh, and by the way, they also have students in their classes. And so it's not easy to get this work done, but I think the reflective actions that come out of doing a study like this really are what can drive improvement, especially when you can partner with NEASC. And I think it's going to be a really good experience for us coming up in the next week. So I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Jen?
In your second to last slide, slide 13, the question was, do you have the time, resources, and support to make progress? What can we as a school committee do to make sure you have those things?
Put more hours in the day. You know?
Yeah, that I can't change. What can I actually change?
Yeah. That's a question I'll just kind of leave hanging out there and think about for a while, because it's an important one to ask. You know, it's in meeting with teachers, it's like we have so much to do. What are the extra things that we probably put on people's agendas that we don't need to? You know, that we have to recognize the stress of the past 2 years is something that it makes sometimes doing work hard. And I think recognizing that's important. But, you know, beyond that, it's hard to say. I think we'd have to discuss that in more detail.
Okay, thank you. All right, other questions? Michelle?
Yeah.
So I know, I believe you were here when there was controversy about whether or not we needed this NEASC accreditation.
Mm-hmm.
So could you talk a little bit about why this is important?
Yeah. So I think it's important because of the standards themselves, when you read what they're about and the expectations under each standard, it's what good schools do. And it's not rocket science, it's really common sense. So to have that out there is important. The way that NEASC works now, they really shifted how they operate, I'll say, based upon a lot of feedback from a number of years and schools saying, we don't need to do this anymore. And I think they heard that, and they changed their approach entirely to be much more collaborative, which is, I mean, they call it the collaborative conference for a reason, because they sit down, and instead of saying, you must do this, they say, what can we do together to help you figure out where you need to go as a school? And then having these more periodic check-ins along a 2 to 3 year increments, I think is important as well. So that's why I think it's important that we do that. You need to have somebody sometimes from the outside come in and say, this is what we see here, and have you thought about it this way?
Okay. I actually just had a timeline question. Can you go back to that first circular chart at the beginning? Well, maybe it doesn't actually have, I think you said it was August is when.
Yeah. Yeah,
Is
so the
when you would actually
accreditation
get the
visit.
report.
Yeah, the big accreditation visit up there, it occurs next week. They produce a draft of the report pretty quick. We go back and forth with that draft, because we'll have questions or maybe some concerns in it. And again, it's a pretty collaborative process. But ultimately, it's the Commission on Public Schools portion of NEASC. They sit down quarterly, I believe, to review these things, and by the time the report's done, it'll be the summer quarter, so we're not going to hear from them till August about our accreditation status.
But you will be getting feedback earlier than that?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, I just wanted to just clarify that. So
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
just-
right away on Wednesday, we'll get feedback from them, and then they'll start their heavy writing, and then we'll get a draft of that report.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else have questions? Yep, Eric.
I just want to thank Brian and Kevin and Kirsten and their team and their staff for having gone through this a number of times. It is a distraction to the teaching day, and it's a lot of work when you start to dig into it and try to come up with, hey, these are our faults, and then put them out there publicly and deal with them. So I really appreciate the work they've done. They've been kind of just zooming off on their own and taking it from where we left it off when I was principal there. So I really appreciate that, and we look forward to it. It's an opportunity to continue to do the work that they've already been doing, and now hopefully coming out of COVID to be able to build on that and make some forward progress.
Thank you. Thank you. It feels like an opportunity for transparent leadership, right? Really appreciate your work on this.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. All right. Next up on our agenda, I think Eric is going to get up and talk about the Student Opportunity Act.
All right. Great. 5626. Sorry about that. The code switched when Brian and I signed out. Student Opportunity Act. Tonight I'm actually going to take a little bit of time to give you an overview. There have been a number of changes since the original, over 2 years ago, and then even since last year. The Student Opportunity Act is basically changing the law that was built in to enhance Chapter 70 funding for all schools, and there are different levels of funding for each school. And depending on the level of funding, you'll learn through this process that we have different forms that we have to fill out. So one thing to keep in mind is Hamilton Wenham is a short form district. So we have a very specific online form that we have to fill in the blanks for the state, answer questions, and now we'll jump into the details. So there are 4 commitments of the SOA: intentionally focusing on students' groups not achieving at the same high levels as their peers. So subgroups that we identify through MCAS data to be able to identify any gaps in achievement using MCAS data based on either averages or set scores out of the MCAS data. Adopting evidence-based programs to close these gaps and to work with subgroups, both in our classrooms and our support programs. And as you know, we actually are kind of marching in tandem with the development of our MTSS. And part of that process has been helpful for us to really redesign our plan as expected by the state. Then monitoring that success, and part of that, again, is looking at things like we've talked about earlier, DIBELS 8 data, early bird screeners, and those types of things that we're using right now that are acceptable metrics to be able to not only identify groups, but then identify the disparities and the reduction in the gaps. And then engaging families, particularly those families representing student subgroups. My opinion on this is really we should be engaging all families the same, really giving them opportunities to connect with our schools and to build and develop relationships with the schools so that even though we identify these gaps, we can have those open and honest conversations and certainly take feedback from our families as well based on what's working or what they may be having difficulty with. Pandemic has really changed the timeline, if you will. The first year was negated. First year of funding was negated back in FY20 because pandemic hit and they decided that it was not a good opportunity to move forward. So this year that we're in right now is going to be kind of continuation of year one based on what the state's doing now. So all the plans were developed pre-COVID, and then it's been extended, and we're extended again. We're into, again, repeating year one. No increases in Chapter 70 money occurred until this year. The first increases we're seeing is in the estimated Chapter 70 funding that we see coming. And then the new game, ESSER. ESSER is a new addition to SOA. So realistically, we've received 3 levels of ESSER. 2 and 3 are to be included in the conversation. So they're really asking you to take a look at what you're using your ESSER monies for and add that into your plan. So we have taken some time to do that and continue to do that. And then they're asking us to rethink our plans because of new circumstances and because of the changes that they made in the submission. The ESSER funds, again, fit really well into our district goals because we used our district goals to drive the use of that money, and it makes a nice solid connection to what our plan development and update will be. These are our increases. This is our SOA increase to Chapter 70, $49,200. So if we didn't have ESSER, that is what we would get based on this new state initiative. Not a lot of money, doesn't go very far in a school district, but that's our base number. It works out to $30 per student based on DESE numbers. So they take their number, students in the district, $30 a piece, and they add that onto your state funding model. The new factors are these two numbers, the ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, almost $1 million that was given to the district over the past 2 years for not only things to mitigate COVID, PPE, and things like that, but also to add, we added staff. We chose to add staff. We chose to purchase literacy materials and things like that. So we now have to kind of backtrack to our original statement last year that was submitted and redesign it based around some of those opportunities that came to us between the last submission and this next one. DESE has a few expectations for us. They want to make it as slight a lift as possible. I'm sorry I laughed, but nothing with them is a light lift. The addition of ESSER was a curveball to many districts, so it was like, oh wow, we got to go back and include that. So we were fortunate. I waited a little bit until we got some updated data, and we've been able to integrate that into our report. Expanding evidence-based programs, we will be doing that with our update. There were only 2 focus areas in the report that was submitted last year. We plan to expand it to 4, and that will give us an opportunity to, again, meet our district goals and stay focused on those goals at the same time. And then realizing that districts already started implementing it, so they're really asking questions, okay, how's it going so far? You said you were going to do this last year, and I'll go back to one of our focus areas was literacy. We said in our report we were designing this new literacy approach, and here's how we were going to do it. So now they're asking us to now quantify it, so we have to identify every piece of the puzzle in our submission. So for instance, if you have 3 literacy coaches, those coaches have to be included in this report, including their entire salaries. Then we have to go back and pull each of the literacy TAs, see the percentage that they're involved in the work, and then add in their salary. So there's a lot of kind of money outlay, really identifying who's been supported by ESSER 2, who's been supported by ESSER 3, and then that will continue into next year. I assume they'll continue this same model so that, as you know, ESSER 3 covers some of our positions for next year. So we have some overlap of funds. So that will start this year and carry into next year as a continued funding source. Subgroups. These are the subgroups based on the selections that we're given from the state. And I'll show you in a second how we come to those subgroups. Just about the same subgroups as last year. There's only one difference. African American and Black students are not included this year because they're not included in the new updated data. There wasn't enough kids to, I don't know if you know how the state works, if they don't have a big enough group, they don't add it in. So we went through by hand and looked at the data sources for each of the kids that would have been identified, and their data's fine. They're right with the average, so it's part of just a one piece that we dropped out. So what happens is, first language, not English students, English language learners and former English language learners tend to be the same group. They still ask you to identify both. Students with disabilities, low income, high needs, generally tend to overlap each other. So one of the things we're finding is these are not totally separate groups of kids. Some of these kids fall into each of these categories more than once. So a student could be an English language learner, could be a high needs student. A student could be a student with disabilities, it could be a high needs student, could be a low income economically disadvantaged. So kids can fit into multiple groups at the same time. And that's what some of our data from the state tells us. So what do we get from the state? This is an example. When you sign into the form at the state level, you go in and you pick your community, and it takes all of your MCAS data, your attendance data, your completion of advanced course data, and your graduation data, and it pulls it into one place live. So at the top of the form, all this information you see here is the first thing you see, first thing you look at. So when you start to identify gaps, it becomes really easy to identify the gaps because in the first column on your left, the MCAS ELA proficiency, the first groups at the top are clearly much smaller than the bottom or even the average 74%. So if you start to just go down that list, you have the categories that we picked: students with disabilities, high needs, Hispanic, Latino, and economically disabilities. So those are the groups that we can target out of that set, just that one piece of data. Move to the next one, do the same. Move to the next one, do the same. Graduation rate tends to be fairly stable across all areas except for students with disabilities. So they're, again, still in the category of a target category. Chronic absenteeism works the other way around. So you look at the average, 6% is the average across the district. Look down here, economically disadvantaged in this data set, 14%. Clearly a gap. So they again, that's how we add them into the data set. And the same with percent of students completing, percent of completed advanced courses for students, same exact thing. It ends up Same group, students with disabilities, high needs. So we can select grades 3 through 8 for 2019. Remember, there was no data for 20 or 2021. And that's what we've done. So here's the 10th grade data. Not a whole lot different. Some of the numbers are the same, but it's still the 2019 data. And again, we go right back down to the first column on your left, the ELA proficiency. Look at the gap based on the difference in, we use the percentages, and then go from there. And again, we end up getting the same groups over and over in our data sets, so we know exactly where we need to target.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So does this data mean, so in the completed advanced courses, that 100% of our Asian students completed a course and 100% of our Hispanic or Latino students completed an advanced placement course
For 2019.
in 2019?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Yeah, the data's fascinating. We actually, we got an opportunity to contract, actually it's not even a contract, it was free with a group called Open Architects through the state. The state, as soon as they sent out this new SOA update, they said, and by the way, if you want to really learn how to play with your data, we are offering this free service. So we jumped on it. We got connected with a gentleman named Seth Racine. He actually is out of Essex, oddly. So he and I became fast friends, and we now have a very highly visual MCAS database that Seth and his company have built for us for free, courtesy of the state. And that gives us the ability to compare all of our schools, student growth percentages, and their moving charts. It's really cool. Like there's a lot of information. Kind of, it's like going down the Instagram hole with MCAS. You just like, well, that changes, and I can move this, and that does that. So it's been valuable for us to be able to really hone in on some things. As I talked about, expectation to use information received from ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 outreach surveys. We did a number of surveys there, so we had to go back and pull those in. And then we're also using survey data from here and individual data from families. So for instance, we know that one of our families with multiple students who are Ls has no internet access or limited internet access, so we work with them directly. That's all data that we can use to be able to say, this is how we're working to help connect these kids to school and help them connect to the program. So anything like that, the data sources that we're using. We have a fairly substantial data set out there right now that we're waiting for, that we've gotten some similar data to the ESSER 3 data source submissions that we got. So there'll be some good comparatives, because the last section of the template for the state is all about how you're engaging families. And and that's actually, we set that as one of our 4 goals for next year, to better engage families in the process, because we truly know that's an area of that's not strong for us, so we want to be able to build on that. So these were last year's focus areas. I did not write these, and they are very different than this year's, only because the state now has changed them into check boxes. So you're going to check this box, or check this box, or check this, and then describe how you're going to focus. So these were the old ones. The idea of this next round is to go back to your old forms and update or reflect upon and update your data and your submissions. We wiped some of it out completely because it really didn't have connections to the data. So for instance, just in the initial descriptions, we were able to go in and say, we've identified these groups and this is why. This is what the data told us. So there was no opportunity to do that last year. That's a new piece of it. So we've been able to do that. So these two they still reflect what we're doing, because there's the addition of the instructional coaches, the elementary director of learning, all those things now transfer into this year. Now we have to identify specifically what we're spending on those particular positions, or even things that we're buying that are specific: technology, literacy materials, books. All that stuff has to be specifically identified in the budgeting process. So that's Desi's idea of a light lift. So And then these are our updated focus areas for this year. Continue with the literacy programs, so the expectation is that you reflect upon your data, tell the state how you are doing, basically. So we've been doing that, working on that. And then inclusion co-teaching for students with disabilities in English. Both of these align 100% with our district goals. They align directly with our district goals. If you the second one, 6 through 12, they are working on inclusive practices at the high school and middle school. They are tracking inclusive practices. They are now expanding from the original 4, some more inclusive practices. So all of that will be included as data for this. And then expanding the capacity to address SEL and mental health needs. If you read my weekly before vacation or while you're on a plane or whatever, there was an extensive section just based on that because we want people to understand what we're doing, and that was kind of the initial highlight of the things that we're doing for this focus area, and that's new for this year. We've added that this year. And then this family school partnerships. We have developed that, added that this year because, again, it's not a strong point for us as a district, and I think it's important to focus on that for all families, not just specific subgroups. So those are our 4 focus areas this year, and really manageable focus areas when you look at the amount of information you're going to have to move and keep an eye on and keep track of and then go back and reference. We'll have to re-reference when we test again this year and compare data sets. So there'll be another submission at the same time next year. And this is our outreach. So some of the outreach we've already done is, as I said, is with ESSER. Staff and faculty surveys, student surveys, family surveys, leadership teamwork. SOA is there's a special ed survey. We actually changed that. We decided not to go at a particular subgroup. We wanted to see overall what our families would say, but there are identifiers within the survey to help us to kind of hone in on filtering data so that we can better look at specific sets of, kids that may have disabilities, kids that may be on a 504, kids that are Ls. What we're finding is we don't have any of our L families connecting with the survey, so now we'll follow up with phone calls and then in-language opportunities for them, for home language opportunities, I should say, for them to get involved. So we have a very interesting translation service that we work with now. It's a 3-way service that you may be familiar with. We can call the service. They can speak to us in English. They can call the family, speak to them in home language, and we can have the conversation. So it's been fascinating. It's been really a good tool for us to do some outreach. And then staff faculty surveys, that will be on kind of, as we close in later in the year, what is the work that we're doing, how's it played out for you as a teacher? And we have a number of different angles that will come from because of professional development. We've got a lot of feedback from our professional development this year. So all those things become data sources for the SOA to help us be able to make connections. And then the leadership, again, will certainly hit the goals at the end of the year and start to say, okay, where are we? Where do we go? And then the development of next year's goals and next year's school improvement initiatives. I'll take questions if you have them.
Okay, go for it.
Thanks, Eric, for that. So I do have a couple questions and a couple comments. And I think, as you know, and people on the committee know, I really, really, really strongly disliked our SOA last year. And I think it was a perversion of the law. So I'm excited that we can revise it a little bit. So I just want to make sure I understood you correctly. We're going to take the original SOA and we get a chance to rewrite it. And we're intending to do that. Is that something that we'll have to vote on again at some other point in the future?
17th we will vote on, but you'll see it before that.
Okay. Just want to make sure I understood that correctly. So you said it a couple times in a way that still gives me some pause when you talked about building those partnerships with families, and you said, well, we need to build those partnerships with all families, and we need to build these bridges in all ways. And that's the part of it that still, to me, goes against the point of the law. And I'm looking at the updated language, and there's a couple places I still feel like I don't know that I'm seeing the intentional focus on the subgroups. You know, districts, this is the new guidance. Districts will continue to address the 4 original SOA Act commitments. 1, intentionally focus on student groups. Monitor success, allocate resources to support these programs. 3 is monitoring sex. 4, engage families, particularly those families representing the student groups in need of support. I mean, I really want to see the new plan, but some of what you're still talking about is still sort of the, you know, a rising tide floats all boats, and that's not the point of the law. The point of the law, it is critical that district resources support the student subgroups as the legislation intended. And I still think our overall MTSS will, you know, great. I'm not saying the district shouldn't be doing that at all, but the Student Opportunity Act is supposed to be focused on the subgroups, and I'm not sure, other than some of the SEL things that you're talking about, and some of, that seems very specifically tied. I can see that, but I'm not seeing, you know, how are we specifically reaching our economically disadvantaged students? Like, where is the evidence that we have an outreach program that? Where is the evidence that we're reaching our Hispanic Latinx students specifically? I haven't seen us talk about that. I haven't seen evidence of that, and I'm still kind of bothered that we're going down that. The other thing that I'm curious to see if we've included or you thought about it, but I'm thinking maybe we didn't. So they added several new strategies that didn't exist. And 2 of them jump out to me as things that could very easily fold into all of our DEI goals that we're doing. One of them is under Enhanced Core Instruction Point 6, says culturally responsive teaching and other strategies that create equitable and culturally responsive learning environments for students. To me, that would really get at the heart of this matter and would tie into the DEI work that we're doing. So I'm curious to know if we've thought about doing that, what that would look like. The other one, which you sort of got to, is for targeted student supports. Number 9 says language support programs, including dual language and transitional bilingual education programs. And I know that we're adding, you know, SEL teachers. We just talked about the language service. In my work, we use probably a very similar mass comms bilanguage service, and it is a game changer. So I would like to see us lean more into the things that are very specific to the subgroups. And I kind of want us to stop talking about, well, this is going to help everybody. The point of the law is to help the subgroups. It's not supposed to help everyone. It's supposed to help the subgroups. So that, for me, is what I'll be looking for when we do the next version of the plan.
And I agree 100% with you. I just think overall we don't do a good job with family outreach, but the plan itself is specifically targeted, as you know, for those subgroups. So the plan's designed around that and gives us the opportunity to say, okay, what can we do for kids that are economically disadvantaged? You know, what can we do for Ls in our district? So think about some of the moves we've made. We have now swapped out for tutors for full-time teachers. So that is a move that we needed to do that we didn't do. The culturally responsive piece, I think, will probably be more appropriate for the next submission, because we don't have any results of the DEI audit. We still have a lot of work to do in the training side, and I think that part will evolve into the culturally responsive teaching. I think that's an important piece of it, but I would never come out and say to the committee that we're 100% moving forward with culturally responsive teaching and training. So that's kind of the reasoning. We've had the conversation about DEI and how that fits in, DEIB, I should say, and how that fits in. And then even when you're looking at special ed, in talking with, you know, we met with the CPAC on I believe it was the 15th. Mm-hmm. I don't know, I can't remember which meeting I went to, but it was an opportunity to connect with them and talk a little bit about some of the things that we're doing, and then also to hopefully bring them into the conversation. In the past 2 years, they really haven't been in the conversation. So those types of things are drivers that we are leaning on. So reaching out to these families initially and saying, hey, what is it that works for you? I don't know if you saw the survey that's out there. Like, what specifically doesn't work for you? And those are the pieces that we need to take and look at individually. So we do have a heavy focus on special ed with just the way our structures are. We have liaisons in place that monitor this data. The data that we collect, so DIBELS data, can be cross-referenced with our school site databases so that we can pull out subgroups and then start to focus and say, okay, where are the weaknesses and where are the strengths of these groups? So we do have a lot of information pointed to each of those subgroups, but I just want to make the point, I don't think as a district we do a good job at bringing our families into the conversation. So that was my meaning of it, but not to reduce the opportunity here with this new submission.
Okay, thank you.
Julia?
I do echo what Anna says, but I'm very encouraged by this submission. I think I haven't seen the full submission, but I think based on this language, it's night and day from the last submission. I love the language around, targeted subgroup outreach. We had a lot of concerns, and echoing Anna's point, last year that it was, okay, well, literacy is going to benefit everybody, so maybe it'll trickle down to the subgroups, or this is going to benefit everyone, so it'll trickle down to the subgroups. Whereas what I'm very concerned with is the targeting of the specific subgroups. How is this going to benefit? And I know you're talking a lot about, it's very data-driven and evidence-based, and I think that's fantastic, but also the targeted engagement. And any way that we can help, any way that we can reach out to community members or talk about how to better do that engagement piece, because I think what you said is so key. Like, not everyone's going to respond to a survey. Not everyone's going to respond to an email. Not everyone's going to respond to something sent home from school. That we need to get creative, like think outside of the box, like actual phone calls, maybe going to houses. I don't know. But I do like that these things are on the table. I think we're moving in the right direction, but we need to push it like a little bit farther. Yep. But I applaud the direction, and I'm excited to see the new and improved application.
We have a lot of opportunities in the district that we haven't been able to take advantage of because of COVID. So for instance, you take something like Title I, Title II funding. Those funds really give us the opportunity to do family-based activities, which are direct outreach and target. So that's what you'll see. We actually built that into the stuff that we're writing so that we can better hone in on, okay, what are some things we want to do? And then the reality of this is constant data collection. It's not just like, okay, what do you have? What do you know? Now we, kind of move it forward and roll it forward, but it's supposed to kind of evolve the way I understand it, so that you're taking something like our literacy, you're taking all this data, all this information, and really examining it to focus in and hone in on the areas of weakness for these subgroups, and then now come up with ideas. What types of ideas can you use? And that's where our student study teams come in. So we built that into the process. The SEL piece is important. If a student's mental health is in the way, then that's certainly can be identified by a number of different things. And you get a little bit limited too by the report by the state, because it's a lot of check off this or check off that. So they box you in a little bit, but where we've been able to write, we've written pretty focused information so that we know these are our subgroups, this is how we picked them. So that was not evident in last year's submission. You'll see specific line items that are identified, salaries, people involved, who's gonna deal with each of these issues, whose responsibility it is. We have a software package that we're trying to finalize some negotiation on that will allow us to manage kids that are discussed at the student study team level. If they are a tier 1 or tier 2 or tier 3 student, it won't matter. This software tracks and pulls in all the data we need, so that when a child becomes identified as maybe in a subgroup, to say this child's in a special ed subgroup, but also not performing well in a particular area, now that software allows us to assign an individual to it, and that becomes like a tracking system, which we don't have. We have nothing like that to be able to track any of that information. So it's really, these weekly meetings occur, they talk about 5 or 8 or 10 kids at these meetings, and then there's never any opportunity to say, okay, who's got the follow-up, who's doing that? So this is part of the thinking of what we're trying to put into place. I mean, I'm 5 months, I think we got a lot done, so we're continuing to grow that, and you'll see when with the submission, we added probably 100 times more detail than was submitted last year. Most of it was blank, if you remember.
I remember.
Thank
So-
you.
The database you're talking about, which is like, heaven in my ears. I'm loving that already. That's part of that state contract for free, or this new service you're talking about is an additional
No,
contract? Or?
This new one, so there's one free database that we're using that helps us to manage our MCAS data. This new thing we would end up purchasing, but it would allow us to use MCAS data, use DIBELS data, use attendance data, discipline data, all of the metrics that we should be looking at when we're looking at subgroups, to be able to say, what's in the way? What's in the way? Is it attendance? The kid's been out 55 times. We don't know why. So those types of things, those conversations will be easier to have, because not only does it track them, but it does like this visual coding and can go through your entire database and bring you a group of kids and say, here are your kids that are most in need of services. It's something we've never had here, and it's something we would like to move forward on. It makes 100% sense to be able to do a better job with that, so that, a kid that got discussed on January 7th in the IST meeting doesn't get discussed ever again, maybe until the parents say, my kid failed everything. So that's the mechanism to react, rather than right now where at the elementary school level, the literacy program has such good data on kids, they can respond now, today, when they do the next set of assessments, and then continue to manage the improvements from there.
Michelle?
Just saying, what Anna was saying, how you feel really strongly about focusing on the subgroups, but I'm hearing what Eric is saying, that it's the chicken and the egg. You really have to go for the big pie and then identify those subgroups. So it sounds crazy backwards, but I think you do have to hit everybody and then focus in what you're saying on our subgroups, correct?
I would do it the other way around. I would do it the subgroups first, but you take advantage of all those tools for everybody. I mean, I think the idea of the SOA is to say, you as a school know you have students that are not performing as well as everybody else, and in some cases, they're not performing even anywhere close. So the state is pushing you to say, target those kids now. So that's what this Opportunity Act does for us. It says, target these kids now, and then move forward. So the idea of the tools, like this one tool we're looking at, we can start it as an MTSS tool, but then it expands out to everybody. It's like I don't know if you ever heard, like IEPs for all. Really, we should be that focused on every kid in the district for whatever their needs may be. So yeah, I would just flip it around. I just think it's incumbent on us to be able to find systems that manage all our kids. Kids change through the year. Kids have mental health issues partway through the year that interfere with their academic performance, and that's real, and that's something that we need to be able to attack as a school system now, not at the end of the year when we say, oh, what happened to Billy? Why did Billy fall apart? It's too late. So we're hoping to be able to put systems in place, taking advantage of technology. We have enough technology in the district to launch the shuttle, so we should be able to track our 1,700 kids.
Thank you.
Okay. Michelle?
So the SOA is $49,000, is that
Yes.
correct? So we're spending a ton of time on $49,000. Is this worth it?
So I'm not even looking at the $49,000. For me, it's been a good opportunity, because the state really has you focus in on what are you doing right now, what are you not doing, and it really gives me an opportunity to take that data set and say, hey, leadership team, we self-identified these as problems. So I think that's the reality of it. It's not about the money right now. I'm looking at it as the whole Chapter 70 funding. Let's look at Chapter 70, $3.8 million. What are we doing with that, I guess? The the $30 increase per kid doesn't even, you can't buy a half a teacher for that right now. So The reality is, I think what's built into the SOA is much more helpful for us and our kids to use as a baseline.
I think that's the important thing to remember. SOA was developed for the purpose of addressing the inadequacies of the Chapter 70 funding formula.
Yep.
And therefore, this whole thing is part of our Chapter 70 funding, and the whole thing is inadequate.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's interesting, when you start to look at Chapter 70 in each district, so we've done comparatives around districts around here, so some districts that are long-form districts are much more detailed than what the expectations are. So it's an assumption that based on size of your budget or based on the amount of money you're getting from the state, you're gonna look more deeply into your kids. So for me, that's kind of, I don't know, that doesn't make sense to me. We should really be looking that deeply at all of our kids anyway. And again, we're small enough to be able to build systems. We don't have systems. You will find out when you see my entry form, we just don't have strong systems in place. So this is a great opportunity to have kind of this, here are the things the state's laying out, here are the evidence opportunities that you can use along the way, and then here's what happens when you start, moving forward, what that looks like, what that change looks like. And again, our comparative data is really going to be 21 and 22. So 20 as a whole, as you know, we don't have data for.
21 and 22 are holes too.
Yeah, the whole thing's a whole, but it at least gives us a good idea. So if we use the MCAS data in conjunction with our literacy data, we will be in good shape. We'll have a very good idea of where kids are at. And kids are actually doing really well at the K-5 level and in their academic achievement, so.
Jen has something.
So I really love that you're collecting data from families, because that wasn't done last year. But I'm concerned that DESE wants us to expand this program to align with ESSER guidelines, because ESSER is a one-time funding source. And these evidence-based programs are ones that we're going to want to institute over the course of years. Not just, and that $1 million is going to run out.
Yep.
So,
Next year.
I mean, we just need to be careful, is the only thing I have to say about that. Because I don't want us to overextend ourselves and then have to cut programs that are working.
Good point.
David?
Yeah, just to sort of piggyback on what you and Michelle both said, I think this is an opportunity because I was really thinking about it from like the ESSER standpoint. We're not predicting that it's going to go on beyond this, right? But from, it is this influx of cash that we can use for a capital expenditure like new software, which will help right down the line. To Michelle's point, thinking about the fact that when you focus best practices on, sort of the students that need the most help, the entire class does benefit, right? So there is that sort of floating all boats in as long as we're sort of focusing in there, I think we're at a good point. I love the idea of this, data tracking system, management system, if you will, where you can then identify, like once you actually have it in place, where right now you're sort of hitting those high needs, you could actually start, when you actually have that data centralized, you could start seeing the students slipping so much quicker, where it's such a small intervention, right? We talk about this all the time when we talk about like IEPs, right? There's some IEPs where it's a student's just needs to sit closer to the board, and then there's, which costs us nothing, which really, it doesn't take much to sort of help them, as opposed to some of these other students who we think that have, more needs and need a little bit more personal attention, which I think is where everyone's mind goes occasionally, as the students that need help, right? So we're actually doing a great job, putting ourselves in a place to do a much better job of actually finding all of those students with those types of needs much quicker, which, after the initial ramp up and capital costs and whatnot, I think we'll actually end up paying benefits in the long run, and hopefully down the line, maybe even start reducing some of those, special ed costs, which would be ideal, but.
And keep in mind, I think you got to look at this from now moving forward. The pandemic has created a bit of a wave in the system. The whole shift to remote and so as Dave said, kind of those models of instruction haven't been there for a long time. So we're now able to move back into those discussions and talk with teachers about that. And you can see it in tracking the data at the secondary level. The inclusive practices gives us an opportunity to kind of hone in and see what we're using, why we're using it, and that was all specifically targeting special ed students in the secondary classroom. So we have a lot of data, we just don't do a very good job at bringing it all together. We have bits and pieces, so this plan helps us to kind of lay it out, but then also follow through. I mean, execute is a new word, I guess, I'm going to use. We need to execute in this district. We need to execute. We can go back and ask every teacher, pick a thing from 3 years ago, it's gone. Pick a thing from 5 years ago, it's gone. So how do we execute and stay consistent and then sustain it? So that's part of the longer term plan.
Do you see us at some point in the future sort of hiring like a full-time data analyst to sort of start really digging in deep? And
it's possible. I mean, that's one of the reasons we're trying to institute this software is to make it more easily accessible for teachers. And think of the time you can waste. Here's a spreadsheet with 50 kids on it and 40 set pieces of data, and then you're a teacher and you have 45 minutes before your next class to go through it. So what we're trying to do is now make it so that the software does the work. We just pop the data in there. It pulls data from our Aspen system. It pulls data from our attendance system, our discipline system, and amasses that in one place for teachers to say, now I know why Billy's having a problem, or now I know why this student is tripping up. So it's just going to take us some time to get into place.
I actually would encourage somebody, maybe even just part-time, to do data analysis, because knowing what keys to click and what tests to do, and that's important.
Yep.
There are people who spend their whole lives figuring that out, who are much smarter than, me in terms of data analysis. So, I mean, even if we bring somebody in just to look at the data and see what is important, even if it's a one-shot deal,
Yep.
It would probably be worth it.
There's definitely opportunities. Like I said, we don't collect any of that. We don't look at it. Like a teacher can't pull up a kid and say, what's happening with this particular student? They can't do that in our system. So we're hoping to alleviate that, taking full advantage of all the data sets we have, but bringing them into one place. I mean, it's a constant monitoring system. So from October 1st, when I walked in the door, we start managing these issues. We're looking at data, we're looking at the SOA, we're looking at you'll see the structure of the questions from the state is, are you doing this? A yes, no, partially. Those are all baseline for us to be able to say, okay, we don't have to go recreate a wheel. It's already here. It's all here in front of us. So now I need to be able to bring it all together and then, as I said, execute.
Anna?
I think what's interesting about this in the context of the SOA and all the other things we're doing is, I think to one degree it's just a shift in educational practice in general, right? Technology exists that didn't exist 5 or 10 years ago. The idea of having a district-based data analytics office is probably something that no one necessarily was thinking of that long ago. But I think, for me, the way that it ties back is, using technology in a district that's under-resourced, which is what we are, and to Jen's point, the teachers are already flat out. The teacher's having to learn to drive a database. As someone who drives a database, it's a very discrete skill set. So I think, we might get more out of the whole system if you have a specialist as opposed to every teacher trying to learn it. So there's a great episode of Abbott Elementary sort of about this and this new technology. If people haven't watched it, it's actually tragically true and funny. But I think the other thing for me that ties back to SOA is that when you have aggregated data over time, you see trends that pop up. And what the SOA is really getting to are those issues of systemic inequality. That's why the subgroups are identified the way that they are. You don't see the system unless you track it over time. And if you have a piecemeal here and a report there, it's not going to see the bigger picture. So I like the idea that we could have a data-driven system to help us identify in our district, is there something about the way our district is built, the system, that is causing certain outcomes for certain kids, and why is it happening, and how would we arrest that? And I think some of it tracks to state and national trends in general. Again, I mean, that's the subgroups, the state made up the subgroups because of readily known identifiable groups. So we're not unique in that way, but I think our ability to say, wow, what is it about our structure of our early literacy program that is yielding these outcomes for these specific kids? We're not going to see that over a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year period. That's going to be a longitudinal study, data-driven, that will then help us address our own inherent systemic inequality within our district. So I like it, but I do support Jen. I mean, I think I'd rather have the teachers focused on the kids, and let's get a data person to help drive this. Because frankly, you also clearly have shown great capacity here. Like the difference between what you're talking about and the way you're talking about it versus last year's plan could not be more of a revolution, which speaks to your competence, which is great, but you're also busy too. So I think a little bit of a specialty here around the data. If we're going to invest in the technology, I think we should invest in a person to drive the technology.
I'll have Vinny find that in the budget.
Well, but I mean, but these are the things
I
like.
agree 100%.
Yeah, why are we asking all of our teachers
Yep.
to learn how to be data wizards when, you know, that may not be their skill set? And some people, like Jen said, I mean, we spend our whole lives doing data because some people really love it, so.
We heard it when they did the literacy presentation. I think it was Rebecca Butler said, I'm not a data specialist, so, you know, it's clear. And that's part of what we want to do, to be able to make that more accessible in a more easily kind of adaptable format, if you will, for teachers to be able to say, okay, now I see it, now I know. Rather than going, oh, I got this giant spreadsheet, I got to go through this, and then I need this piece of paper, and then I need this piece of paper, and then I got to go into Aspen. So we're trying to bring all that together. It's going to take a little time, but we will make it happen.
Okay.
I do love the data, though.
Michelle, did you have, Michelle, did you want to say something?
I'm hoping we can move on, because
Yeah,
we've moved from questions to telling our superintendent how to operationally run the schools, and I would like for us to move on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I am also mindful that we have other things on the agenda, so we do need to get moving. Okay, thank you very much
You're
for
welcome.
that. Are you going to stay up there? Are you going to come?
I'll come back.
Okay,
Coming back.
we'll let you do that then. Okay, Eric, you're up again.
So this is actually exciting news for me to share with everybody. I shared it with some of our teachers today, and they were excited by it. But we have been officially invited into the Cutler School eligibility period based on our SOI that we submitted last year, which is encompassed the combination, the thought process about combining Winthrop and Cutler into one new school. So we've been invited in. Just so I just want people to know, that doesn't mean we have the project. We will be extensively vetted over the next, over the next 300 days or so. Starting, we are a May group, so they stagger out. There were 17 school systems invited into the process. They stagger the 17 school systems out over a number of months, starting with April. We're a May group, so from May 2nd, the clock of 270 days starts ticking for us to meet some of these submissions to the state. And the state will basically determine if we're ready to manage a fund a major capital project in this district. They will determine the district's financial readiness. They'll determine community readiness, provide a schedule of events, and then identify all the needs for planning. So that first window for us is vetting, to see if we're ready. Are you ready? I think they felt from our tours that we did and their visit that we were ready in talking to everybody that was on the tour and getting the information. And they realized that we need help with at the elementary level with our schools. So in the first 30 days, we will just submit a generalized agreement to say, yes, we agree to work with the MSBA. So that will come before the committee, probably the first meeting in May. So that first, I think it's the 4th meeting in May. That will be the first thing that we discuss and vote upon. That will get submitted no later than June 1st. Then we have to choose our school building committee. So that will be a very extensive process of inviting a couple of you, Vinny, myself, Tom Geary, people representing town boards, residents, teachers. So all those kind of that vetting, our group, kind of just getting the word out is going to be important so that we can get as many people involved in that process. It's usually about 15 to 20 people on your school building committee. And that includes professionals that have an understanding of construction and things like that. So it's not just, hey, you want to be on the committee. You really have to have a skill set to be part of this committee. So we'll do that, and then we'll build our educational profile. That takes about 4 to 6 months to build. It is an extensive document data set to be able to create. So several of us will be doing 2 jobs, Vinny. So it's really kind of gathering all this data, looking at the numbers, looking at projections, looking at building in the communities, activities that are going on in the communities, and they bring it all together and use that as a basis to make decisions. At the end of the 270 days, if you made it through all of the hoops, then you get invited into the next phase, which is feasibility, and then that's where you start to say, okay, we're ready for a project. Now, what does it look like? There's no guarantee that this project would end up being built on the Cutler property. It could, but professionals could come in and say, here's a better scheme. So they'll look at all of the avenues presented to us, and then we as communities decide. So that's kind of the next steps, if you will. But the current focus is the first 270 days. So we actually started that work today. So. Moving forward. So that's exciting news.
Very
I think
exciting.
It's a great opportunity for us to meet the needs of our kids, give them kind of what they deserve in our schools, and also give an amazing opportunity for our teachers to work in 21st century building, which it would be awesome for our teachers.
I just want to actually say, I wish Tom Gary was here tonight. When he came in to the district, he knew this is something that we wanted. It was a goal of his that he and I spoke about, privately many, many times. And, having been a rep with this, the first time we did the tour and the second time we did the tour, even the way he went about planning the tour of the facilities, he had every little detail down of what he wanted to show, how he wanted to show it. And he really put in a lot of legwork to really help us get there. So I wish he was here to sort of thank him in person, but this is huge.
I just have a question. So just for people in the community that don't know about the project, what at the end game, maybe how many kids, what's it gonna look like? We don't know.
We don't know. That's what
Yeah.
the feasibility study will bring.
Okay.
The reality is, if you combine 2 elementary schools, you got to make some determinations of the realistic number of kids, future number of kids, but also the regional agreement comes into play. So you still have to have a building in each community. So that's still part of the puzzle. There's a number of opportunities, number of ways to go, if you will. You could say, okay, Bucher is going to be a preschool program, pre and K. And that's their whole focus in the Bucher. And then 1 through 5 is at this new building. You could have it the other way around. You know, there's a lot of different configurations, and what happens through that study process is they'll look at it, they'll look at locations, they'll look at design of building, what types of opportunities that you want to have for kids. They'll do all kinds of, you know, community workshops and things. So it's pretty extensive. I went through it in Wilmington just before I came here to build their high school, which is a massive complex, but amazing for meeting kids and teachers' needs. So it's exciting. This is a very exciting opportunity for us.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very exciting, and I'm glad we got to finally announce it. That's good. All right. Okay, well, I don't have anything nearly that exciting next on the agenda. I put this on here because I felt like this is really just logistics, is that we had a good discussion, and I think we got, and I will send you all an email with the actual timeline I have this, that Dorothy is coming next week, and I am apologetic because I was clearly not clear, because we had 2 different members that were not clear on that, so.
No, it's
so
okay.
my apologies.
Next week or the 17th?
I'm sorry, next meeting on the 17th. Correct, next meeting on the 17th. So I will send you out a timeline, but the reason that we still had this on here is I wanted to make clear, sure, and I didn't know whether we got a definitive answer. I think we had a good conversation, and I actually went back and watched our conversation about the new members, about whether or not they're going to participate in the evaluation process. And since Dorothy's only going to be here for half an hour, I really wanted to not spend our time talking about that with Dorothy. I thought we can resolve that here. And it looked like we had a good conversation, and we're really clear about past precedent and what happened when Jen joined the committee at a similar time. But we didn't actually have a vote to determine that we really wanted to make it clear whether or not new members would participate in the evaluation process. So I just wanted to bring that to the committee so that we could have a concrete, I guess maybe we need a vote or just a discussion to sort of make sure, so that before members are even elected, they're clear on what the expectation is on evaluation.
So how many weeks would they even
would be
have?
elected on April 7th. I am going to also, I also should have said in all of that April 28th is going to be our meeting. I had put that out to you because April 21st was a problematic date. So we are going to meet on April 28th. So new members will be elected on April 7th. They will come to the first meeting on April 28th. And then Eric is going to be presenting his evidence on May 19th. So it would be 3 weeks is the answer. From the time they would attend their first meeting until the time.
I guess I would ask David and Michelle, is there past precedent for this?
Well, the superintendent's evaluation used to be at a different time of year. So
Yeah, it was October.
it was more like December timeframe.
It was October, November, I believe.
Well, yes, but before you were the chair, it was in like December. So it was at a different time.
Right, I think
So no.
we do have.
And then and then before that, the superintendent's evaluation was always done like the Thursday before town meeting, because that's when the new members would be elected, would be at the town meeting time. So it was always done before the election. But now that the election isn't in May and it's in April, doing it in April would be an odd time frame. There is in other school districts precedent that new members do not participate.
Right. And I would argue that we have that past precedent. Jen did not participate.
Right.
And Julia, my understanding is, no matter what, as we experienced with Julia, was very clear that a member couldn't make any kind of evaluation except for the period of time when they were actually on the committee. So I really just didn't want to make a judgment without the committee. I don't think we need to talk about it for forever. I think I just want it to be, I want the expectation those people who are running for office would know what the expectation is, and that, so I'm just looking for guidance from the committee or consensus. Anna?
So I think, especially given the complexity of the role of a school committee member and the complexity of evaluation, I think it would be unfair to both Eric and the new members to have any expectation of reasonable feedback after a 3-week period. So I fully support saying to the new members, you will not participate in the evaluation process. That doesn't feel unfair. That actually feels more fair. But what I would like to do is find a way to allow the outgoing members who have been here the whole time.
So I'm gonna just interrupt you, because I did
Okay.
mention, I think I mentioned that last time, and that is something that Dorothy recommended to me. She said you can invite the outgoing members to come to that meeting and participate in the discussion.
But they're not allowed to vote.
They are not allowed to
vote. Okay, so would the new members be allowed to vote or no? Are they completely recused from the situation? Because you could have
I think they vote. I don't know. I think they
Jen,
vote.
did you
No,
vote?
I didn't vote.
I don't know.
I don't
I can look that up. I don't know.
So we could theoretically have a scenario where if we have 3 new members, we would have feedback from the 3 outgoing members, no input from the 3 new members, and the only people who actually vote would be the 4 of us here, which would be a quorum. I mean, I think that's just sort of a scenario that
That's
could
one. That's
happen.
one scenario. That wouldn't necessarily. There are lots of other scenarios, but yes, one would just have to hope that the chair will have written the compilation that will be accepted.
Well, I
So-
also think that you should be doing the compilation, not whoever is the new chair.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's part of right. We would need to decide that.
Yeah.
Right. That's up to the committee, right?
Well, you should decide that.
Okay, so I guess I'm asking, so it sounds like we have 2 things to decide, so I don't know if people are willing to make a motion, but it would be good for me to have an actual decision from the committee so that it feels like it's decided.
I can make a motion.
Julia, go for it.
I move that the newly elected school committee members not actively participate in the superintendent's evaluation.
Can I?
Should I also say,
okay, wait,
I
wait,
move that the
whoa.
outgoing school committee members are allowed to participate in the evaluation but not vote?
Yeah, before, I think you said actively participate. I think maybe
Oh.
they do not maybe submit a written evaluation. I don't know what people think.
I think Jen wasn't actually even allowed to speak.
I wasn't
Yeah.
even, yeah.
No, I
was
think
gonna say,
you're
I
right.
wasn't even
No,
allowed
you're
to
right.
speak.
Right, okay. Do we have a second for Julia's motion?
Second.
Okay. Michelle, you're nodding your head.
I'm saying she gets the second.
Oh, second by Jen. Okay. All right, and I'm sorry, did you actually include in that we invite the outgoing members?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right, is there further discussion?
And does that resolve the voting issue or no? Was it just about the discussion and the,
I think it would resolve
I
their,
said,
if they're not,
they
they're
can't
not
actively
participating.
Can't
Participating.
actively participate.
okay, so they
They would
couldn't.
be here, they would be present,
Okay.
but they wouldn't be participating. Okay, all right, we ready to vote? All right, all those in favor? All right, and that is unanimous. Thank you all
Would you
very much. The
entertain a
motion passes.
second motion?
Yes, Michelle.
I move that the Dana Alera would be the compiler of the superintendent evaluation.
Second.
All right, second by Anna Caesar. All right, is there discussion?
Nope.
Nope.
We had to do it, you have to do it.
Clear your weekly calendar.
I think not joking aside, I think that is by far the most appropriate, logical thing
Yeah,
to
no,
do. I mean, we do, but I recognize that does make work for you.
No,
But I think it's the right work for you to
It's
do.
actually, it is appropriate that it is the work of the chair for the, yes. The evaluation occurs at a funny time of year. All right, all those in favor? All right, and that is unanimous, and the motion passes. All right, thank you all very much for doing that. I appreciate it. All right, Eric, you're up again.
Up again. All me tonight.
It is.
Okay, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this right now because you honestly need, I'm going to take up some of your time now, I guess, to sift through the evaluation evidence to date. This is what could be considered a mid-year evaluation, and I just want to tell you about how I organize it, and then really give you time to go through it. And if there are any questions or issues that pop up, just reach out directly to me, and I can at least address those. And we've been through every link on this more than once just to make sure everything worked, and really tried to initially give you some, there are my goals, here's my entry plan, here's the evaluation rubric that we use at the state level, and then jump into the key actions related to the goals that I set and that were approved by you in the fall. So gives you a rough idea of at least where we're going with those key actions. Certainly they will continue through the rest of this school year, and some of them will go beyond it. And then in each standard, I broke out the 4 standards and tried to plug in pieces of my goals in each of the standard areas as I outlined them in the goals. That's what we had agreed upon in the fall. At the end of the standard section, I wrote a brief reflection of the information that was there and also some of the processes that took place along the way. And there are still, like I recognized this morning, I forgot to put in work with the negotiation subcommittee. So there's still those things popping on here. But this is so you just get an idea based on the way the superintendent's evaluation is set up. I tried to organize it in that same way so that make it easier for you to touch with each of the standards that you'll be writing about in the spring, right? That's coming soon. So certainly any questions I can answer along the way. I can continue. I'll continue to grow this document from now to the 19th submission, the May 19th submission. So things that I do will be added in, and it'll just continue to grow. So this is kind of a starting point for you. There's a lot of information in here, so certainly take time to digest it, and please reach out to me with any questions you have, and I will do my best.
Thank you, and I appreciate that, and this was, intentional. This is sort of how we've been trying, Eric and I have been trying to handle a lot of things that have a lot of information, which is that you get the information now, and so that we can have a productive conversation next time. I really do encourage you to take Eric up on the offer of a conversation with him on some of the specifics, because there is a lot here. So I encourage you to do that.
My only comment is I can't even believe how much work has been done since October. It seems like, 5 months. This is an impressive document, so I look forward to reviewing it.
Absolutely.
There's actually way too much in the entry plan. Which I think I told you 4 months ago. There's way too much in here, but you've done a great job so far.
There's a lot more coming, so we got some good stuff coming your way that will help us.
Excuse me.
Okay. Right. Anything else? Okay. All right. Do we?
Jen has something.
Oh, Jen.
Just one comment in the actions, on the goal action state. So under goal 2, the last action, I know you did this, but
yeah.
you didn't put anything underneath it.
I'm going to put it in right now, though. It's in there.
And it would be informative if, for the ones that are not started, if you had an idea as to when you were going to start those, like not asking for like November 15th, 2022.
Yep.
I'm like late fall, late spring, type information.
Several of them are connected to the strategic plan that we
I know.
we shifted, so I can definitely put that right next to it. It's easy. That's a good suggestion.
Okay. All right. All right, next up. I think we have finance and operations on there, but do we have anything?
Denise's
Nope.
been quiet tonight.
All right. So,
Can I ask a question about that?
absolutely.
Have we had any interest in our assistant treasurer position?
Just one so far, one applicant.
If it's the right one, it's good. Yeah, okay, super.
We only need one.
As long as it's not me again.
Oh, all right. All right, well, so next on the agenda is the review of the face coverings policy, which you may all recall, we just,
I move to remove this from any
Yes.
future agendas.
Right, that's exactly,
Ever.
because
Were
we
you
had
gonna
a
do that?
motion that we would continue to review
yes.
it monthly.
No,
so-
that-
I
so-
second that.
I would second David's
Seconded
motion.
by Julia and everyone here. Is there discussion? Okay, all those in favor? All right, and that is unanimous. We can cross that off the permanent agenda here.
That's since November.
Seriously.
Yeah, it feels good. Okay. And look,
Eric, you're up.
Eric, you're up again. Superintendent's report.
Good night, okay. I have a couple things, not a ton, but I do want to read a statement. I need to clarify the record. I think it's important to do this. On Monday, February 14th, I received a public records request for information related to a copy of the following records. Any request for an opinion or issued opinions by the town or committee council pursuant to Chapter 268A, Section 22, which is a conflict of interest laws, for any Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee member made on or after June 30th, 2020. After an initial search of the records and reaching out to town council, both town councils and our previous council and current council, I was unable to locate the requested records and notified the requester of such. On the 17th of February, during public comment, a resident spoke about articles of organization being filed by a member of the school committee, and that his assertion was that it looked to be a political action committee, and stated 268A opinion was not issued by town council or committee council. After the meeting, I was made aware that forms had been filed with the superintendent of record at the time, and the secretary of the school committee, as required by law. And after an email search, disclosure of appearance of conflict of interest form, a disclosure by school committee or charter school trustee of a financial interest in a general school fee form, and a disclosure of a supervisory school official regarding advocating for a child form was filed by the committee member on July 1st, 2020, as required by the secretary, with the secretary of the school committee. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I initially went out there and said there was no evidence of forms. So those forms do exist and were filed as stated on the actual forms themselves. So just want to clarify the record.
Thank you, Eric.
You are welcome. And then a couple of quick congratulations. We are closing out the winter sports season, so we're phasing into spring very quickly, but we still have some tournaments going on. Last night, our girls won their first round of tournaments, and they are moving on. We don't know yet. We're waiting for tomorrow night's game, but they'll move on to, I think it'll be Tuesday night. That's what seems to be the pattern right now for the next round. And then
Would that be Tuesday at home, or does it depend on who?
Depends on the seed.
depends on the seed of the team who wins the game tomorrow night. And then boys hockey will be home at noon on Saturday. So those two teams are still in tournament contention.
Which home?
Pingree.
Or-
I think they're in Weymouth.
I'm sorry, they are. They're at Weymouth. I'm sorry, because they're at Weymouth. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Glad you were here. So the boys will be at Weymouth at noontime on Saturday, and then if they win, they move on. I assume it's going to be either Tuesday or Wednesday as well. They try to stagger teams from the same school, so the tournament's always exciting for kids, and it's a great opportunity for schools to come together. Our kids travel well, they get together and come, so it's exciting if you get a chance to come to the game and watch and see it all kind of come into the making. It's a great opportunity. And then spring sports will be starting up in a couple of weeks, once all the snow melts, and going from there.
Don't need the snow to be melted to start spring sports. Just saying.
All right.
Maybe our baseball season can start as opposed to other baseball seasons.
Oh, boy. All right. Committee reports. Capital Finance?
We did meet on March 1st, and we talked about fiscal year '23 marketing tools for the budget and started brainstorming with that information. And is that it, Michelle? I think was mostly what we focused on.
Mostly.
Yeah.
Okay. Policy?
Policy Subcommittee had a riveting discussion of the J section policies on Monday night. And we are just cruising. Dorothy Presser actually ran out of notes for us. We met her expectations and got our way through it. So we have another meeting scheduled. There's a lot of interesting stuff coming down from the MASC itself is interesting on, in particular in regards to all those protected classes. So we've had a really good set of conversations around that. But Dorothy continues to be great. Superintendent Tracy continues to be great. It's really riveting though. Policy Subcommittee, J section is like the best time in town.
Excellent. All right. Negotiations, we have a meeting on Wednesday with the custodial union. I don't think I have anything else to report on that. Anybody else from negotiations have anything else? All right, I do have a few things for my chair's report. Okay, one, I did just say, and I will send you an email, and we will want to make sure we get the word out to any, we do have people running for office, that our meeting is going to be on, we are not going to meet on April 21st. We are going to meet on April 28th. That is an off week. It's not the normal every other week. So I want to make you aware of that. I did want to just also let you know that I did send out both the resolution on universal free lunch and the letter to the Attorney General. And I wanted to let you know I did get nice emails from both Representative Belcito and Senator Bruce Tarr. I got emails from both of them that were not form emails, like they both had clearly, were responding to the specifics, which is really great. Felt good. This Sunday afternoon, Michelle Horgan, Michelle Bailey, and I will be attending the NEASC, what do we call it? Conversation.
Collaborative convening or something like that.
Yes. So we will be we'll be a part of that process. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but and this is all kind of related. I want to make sure Michelle Horgan maybe can help me. I want to make sure that we are having representation in all the different groups regarding the upcoming budget, and I also want to talk about make sure we're covering the select boards and the warrant hearings, and so I don't know exactly. Maybe, Michelle, you can start us off with what you know, and then I have a few notes on things I want to make sure we're covering, and not over-covering, but just...
Right. I'll give a quick synopsis, I guess. So Eric and Julia met this morning with the Friends of Middle School, High School, which I heard went really well, which is great. We are meeting with Friends of Bucher,
Yeah.
Friends of Cutler. We have not heard back from the Friends of Winthrop. We have Mothers Group, Hamilton Mothers Group has signed up for the 28th. I am looking for someone to do that, which
What
would be
was the
great.
date?
Excuse me?
What day?
March 28th, which is a Monday night. It's to be determined where it's going to be. Council, Monday?
What time?
7 o'clock, after the babies are in bed. We are meeting with a combined council on aging. Vinnie, Eric, and I will be there with muffins and coffee for our happy seniors. So we're pretty well covered. We haven't heard back from the Friends of the Library. I don't know who suggested that.
I suggested that. I can follow up with them.
Okay, would you, because I sent them an email and I haven't heard back. And I think you're also doing FODA, Julia,
What am I doing?
Friends of the Arts.
Yeah, oh, yes.
You got
yes,
that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
I
yes.
did ask everyone just to confirm their meetings. If you could just go
I
back on the
know.
spreadsheet and just put yes, that it's confirmed, that would be great.
Okay.
If you need help with how to present and what to present, please check in with Vinnie. We can always use the slides, and I don't know what Julie and Eric, what you used today.
We just talked.
Okay, that's good. I'm meeting with the Ed Fund on Tuesday and with the high school athletic meeting on next Wednesday. So,
So one thing about the Mothers Club is that's the same night as the Wenham warrant hearing.
Okay.
So,
Which transitions us nicely into the next thing that I want to make sure. So we need somebody to do the Mothers Club, and then I really want to get clear on when the warrant, who's going to be at each warrant hearing and when they are. So,
I'm planning to be at the warrant hearing.
okay.
And I'm also planning to go to the Board of Selectmen on the 8th when they're making their recommendation.
In Wenham.
In Wenham, yeah.
In Wenham. Okay. All right. So, first, wait, let's first say, so do you need somebody to say they're going to do the Mothers Club?
yes.
So if nobody's jumping at that right now, maybe somebody can send Michelle an email, or were you
Yep.
thinking you might be able to do that?
I mean, I can do it too, I don't mind.
But I'm probably gonna, it looks like I'll be open there, but,
Okay,
so.
You're not
So-
a mother, though.
yeah, you're not a,
Well, that's
I don't know
not,
if you
my
can go to the
goodness.
Mothers Club.
that's not,
but if you, it
It's
just,
like the WVIS, it's
when I'm only, go on the Google sheet that we have and just put your name if,
That's it, I was actually just looking at.
okay. And we can always circle back and confirm, so it's fine. But we've got great coverage, so.
great. All right, so to the warrant hearings, I do just want to make sure. So I heard you say, so let's start with Wenham. We can just clarify what dates are you, go ahead, Michelle, tell me what the Wenham dates are that you.
So the Board of Selectmen anticipate right now making their recommendation votes on the 8th of March. And then they have their warrant hearing on the 28th, which is the opportunity for people to come and ask questions. There may be nobody who comes and asks questions.
So I'm not, this is just a clarifying question for me, because what I'm understanding is that Hamilton's, what I was calling, Hamilton is meeting on Monday night, the 7th.
Is meeting what?
This coming Monday, the Select Board in
On the
Hamilton is meeting
7th.
on the 7th. And my understanding of that meeting is that is to set the warrants, or to, it's not to make a recommendation, it's to get the wording of the warrants. Is that
Close
correct?
are they closing the warrant? Is that what they're doing?
I had it as the 15th.
So my understanding is that on the 15th, they are having Hamilton is having a joint Select Board and FinCom, in which they're going to make a recommendation as to whether, where they make a recommendation about taking favorable action, right? But on the 7th, which is just a few days from now, on Monday, I went back and forth a little bit today about just the wording of the actual warrant I was actually talking about for the regional agreement. So not the document that we were talking about, but the warrant where it just says,
Yeah.
shall the town take action on this
That's on the agenda, I think, for
on
Monday.
the 7th?
Yeah, this coming Monday.
But what I'm trying to get clear on is, when does that happen in Wenham? Because it can't happen
On the
after.
8th. is on the 8th.
Why can't it happen on the 8th?
Oh, I thought you said it was the 28th.
No, the 8th.
Oh, so the
Is-
8th is the warrant hearing, and the 9th is the recommendation.
No,
No.
no.
I'm sorry.
Hamilton and Wenham use
I
the
understand that, but
same terminology for different meetings.
Okay, so can you explain Wenham to me one more time again?
So in Wenham, the warrant has already been closed.
Okay,
At some point, they will vote their recommendations on whether or not to do favorable actions on the warrants that they have. Right now, that's anticipated on the 8th of March.
okay,
Now, they may be waiting till the 15th to do the joint programs.
with the FinCom.
So maybe we will be on the 15th instead of on the 8th.
Okay,
But then Wenham holds a warrant hearing where the public can come and ask questions. They review all the information, they review all the slides. Hamilton has a warrant hearing where they just decide who's going to speak on what topics. They do not have a question and answer period. They do not have a run-through of the meeting.
Yep, it's
yeah,
different.
They use the term warrant hearing.
Got it.
In different ways.
different ways, okay. So, and you are planning on attending both of those meetings in Wenham? Correct, okay. And Vinny and Eric, which meeting were you planning on attending in Wenham?
I
And
try to go to all of them as long as I have the dates right and don't miss it.
okay,
But I'll confirm that I have the dates.
yeah, and I did some work on it today. I really, I'm just not quite clear, because there was, I don't really think that it's substantive, but there was a back and forth about just the language of the warrant.
You mean for the regional agreement in Hamilton?
The regional agreement,
Okay.
right, for the warrant article.
So the lawyers are just going to work that out?
Exactly, they're going to work it out, hopefully, and so, but it does seem important that someone be there in case
I was
someone have
planning to go to the
Right,
select
and
board anyway.
I will actually be at the Friends of Bucher.
Okay.
So I will not.
I was planning to go to the Hamilton Select Board on Monday because Eric's also talking about the MSBA and the warrant, so I can cover the Hamilton BOS on Monday, if that's what you're
Okay,
looking.
well, and I guess it's really not so much budget related, but more about if anyone wants to
Warrant.
understand sort of this reason or the thought process behind the regional agreement amendment.
Mhm.
So, okay, all right. Okay. All
And
right.
just one more topic, or event, the Rotary Club.
I reached out, I'm just waiting to hear back. I'll take care of that.
Awesome, great,
I'll-
thank you.
Yeah, I'll be there.
But you
Is
do.
there breakfast?
What's that?
Is there breakfast involved?
It's on Friday.
You
yeah.
get breakfast?
It's on Friday, 7:30 at Tea House.
Yeah, it's breakfast.
Let me know when you're going, I might meet you there. If there's free coffee, I might meet you there.
Pick me up on the way.
Yeah.
Dana, you made a good point, is that when we're talking to people, it's not just the budget.
Right.
It's, we need to just clean up this election wording, and, there's no reason to oppose this, just,
Right.
it's just to clean up something that needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, thank you all for walking me through that, I appreciate that. Do we have any topics for future meetings? No. Shockingly, no, okay. So I am now going to move to adjourn into, unless anyone has any else, all good? Okay. I'm going to vote to move to adjourn into executive session for purpose number 7, to comply with public records law and attorney-client privilege, and not to return to open session.
Second?
Second by Anna Seidzek, and I think I have to do a roll call, is that correct?
Yep.
David?
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
Anna's a yes. Anna?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Michelle?
No?
Michelle Horgan?
Yes.
Okay, it is 6-1, and the motion passes. And we are adjourned.